What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Real quick before we start, I'm sure the Nintendo fiscal numbers are out for the most recent quarter. Those will go over probably tomorrow in Newswave, unless it really piles up, and I want to do that later on today. They came out yesterday at 2 a.m. last night my time, so they didn't have a chance to make it in. But go check them out, see how close you were for the Switch numbers, see how many they sold worldwide, at least shipped. And then hopefully there is a Q&A going on. Hopefully the people who are lined up to ask questions, specifically like investors, don't ask bad questions like, can we get free passes to your amusement park? Hopefully they ask more things about the virtual console and the online service, and then maybe some games coming up. Just ask good questions, please. But we have a lot of stuff we got to go over today, including what appears to be an official Gamecube emulator that has now surfaced that's running on a Tegra chipset, similar to the one that's in the Switch. And then also EA had their investors briefing, their entire conference call, said some weird stuff on there. And then we also found out how Battlefront 2 did, and a little more information about some stuff coming up from them. So let's get into it. Now, over on Resetera, there was a user by the name of Dragonbane that posted all about how they imported an Nvidia Shield that was the one specific to China. Do you remember how we talked about this previously, where they were going to be getting Nvidia Shields, and they're going to have first-party Nintendo games on there? Things like Mario Galaxy was named, Mario Sunshine, I believe, was named at some point. But the big one that they definitely put a big spotlight on was Zelda Twilight Princess. I remember they even showed it playing at one point, which was really cool to see that. But we didn't really know much about it. Was it a port, or was it what we all hoped? And was it emulation? Because if they actually build an emulator for, say, the Tegra that runs GameCube games well enough, then what's stopping them from bringing that over to the Switch? Here's where things get very interesting. Apparently, this version of Twilight Princess runs astoundingly well. Like really, really well. 30 frames per second, no problem, no dips, 1080p straight up. Appears to have anti-aliasing and everything. Overall, it is a very solid port of Twilight Princess. At least we thought it was a port, because it turns out, after going through the code, Dragonbane found, well, it looks like this is an emulator. They even had some off-screen footage of the game being played, which you can see here. Back up very quickly, Dragonbane is actually a glitch hunter for the 3D Zelda in the speedrunning community. So what they do is they get this stuff for different versions of Zelda and see if they can get through it faster. And of course, people will speedrun different versions. So they imported this to start checking it out, find glitches, and then try to exploit those glitches to do speedruns faster. In this case, again, they found something they weren't expecting, and that was that this was an emulator that is running Twilight Princess on a Tegra processor. Sure, it's slightly different, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why that might be a bit of a problem for the Switch. However, I think Nintendo can absolutely get GameCube games playing on the Switch. I'm going to tell you that now. The big thing here is the Nvidia Shield that they're using runs at a higher frequency. The CPU clocks are twice what the Switch is. The Switch seems to be around 1 gigahertz processing power there for the speed, and then the frequency on the Nvidia Shield is doubled to 2 gigahertz. So since the CPU is vital with emulation, that could pose a problem. However, I think when docked, the Switch is more than capable of playing GameCube games through emulation. The thing I'm a little concerned about, or unsure of, I should say, is when it becomes portable, because the frequency of the GPU does drop down, so the GPU would have a harder time helping the CPU, whereas when it's in dock mode, it should have enough power to help the CPU if needed to do rendering and get everything going for the GameCube emulation. The other question we have is, who built this emulator? Was it Nvidia or was it Nintendo? Because it's very possible that Nintendo greenlighted the idea, Nvidia sat down with help from Nintendo, maybe they gave them access to the SDKs or access to some of the previous emulators that they've done in the past for things like the N64 or other things, examples basically, and help them build the GameCube emulator. I'd be curious if Nintendo has access to that for the Switch. I have a feeling it may have been Nvidia that built this with Nintendo's help, and they signed off on it. It seems to be kind of Nvidia's project here with this release in China. So I hope Nintendo does have access to it, because I think they built this specifically for the Shield, but I think it will also find its way over to the Switch when they are ready to start emulating and start adding virtual console games that are, well, GameCube games. The big question is, how do they deal? It's funny, the big thing we're all worried about is how do they deal with analog triggers? Honestly, release different Joy-Cons that we can use. Sure, analog triggers won't always work in, say, different games that we use now on the Switch, because they're designed for digital triggers. However, I think we can get by on them, and I personally would love to buy. It sounds crazy, but I would love to buy kind of GameCube purple themed Joy-Con controllers that have analog shoulder buttons on them, so I can play my GameCube games. At this point, let's get the virtual console going. Let's bring that emulator over. Let's get GameCube games on the Switch. All right, let's move over to EA real quick. So get ready for this one. This is confusing all over the place at times, but we're going to get through it. We have quite a few things to talk about from EA because people were very curious. How did Battlefront 2 actually perform? That's something they told us. And also they told us a little bit about Anthem and if things line up with that Kotaku story where they told us it wouldn't be coming out until 2019. Sarah E. Needleman posted from the Wall Street Journal all about really this conference call. And this is something that really confused some people. We're going to go down through this here. Blake Jorgensen also chimed in here, but this is what they had to say. Electronic Arts says it is now planning to release Anthem, an online multiplayer action game from its BioWare studio, in early 2019 instead of fall 2018 as originally planned. The company denies a report in video game site Kotaku earlier this month, claiming the change is due to development being behind schedule. Instead, EA is planning to release a new Battlefield game in October, and it determined that Anthem, the new intellectual property, would get more attention if it came out in a quieter quarter. It's not a delay, EA's finance chief Blake Jorgensen tells the Wall Street Journal. People are trying to create a story. It's not a delay, but it was originally set up for 2018, as we saw in the trailer, and now it's going to 2019, but it's not a delay, so I don't really know what they would call it now. I guess the game is just being moved to a different year that's further in the future. And it's not a delay. Now, I really don't know what they're trying to do here. Some of the PR speak sometimes these companies do is just weird. They just essentially confirmed that the game is being pushed back to 2019 to make room for a new Battlefield game. Sounds cool. I hope it is Bad Company, but it'll probably be something else because I want Bad Company and they just want to give us something else, I guess. But here's the weird thing. They just confirmed Kotaku's story while also saying that it's untrue, so I'm very confused here. They don't want to say it's a delay, despite defining and then telling us about a delay. So I don't know. It's weird. Maybe they misspoke, but they seem very adamant about this not being a delay, but it's being pushed further into the future, which essentially is a delay. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about this. Is this just PR speak at its finest? And they don't want to say the word delayed because that's a bad word in the video game world. The Wall Street Journal also went on to report that Battlefront 2 sold 9 million. They say sold. I keep getting the word, I keep seeing shipped and sold kind of thrown around here. I think it's actually shipped, by the way. They shipped 9 million units of Battlefront 2, despite them using the word sold. But then they later used the word shipped. Again, this seemed to be kind of a mess all over the place, but 9 million essentially is what they reported, down from 10 million, which was pretty conservative because originally they wanted it to be 14 million going forward, so they kind of missed everything. They were a million off. But still, 9 million is quite a bit. It wasn't enough to top Call of Duty, which blew this thing out of the water, right? And they did have the Star Wars name, so yes, they probably should have hit their higher estimate, but they didn't. So I guess that's a minor win for gamers. However, they did go on to say that microtransactions are absolutely coming back. They're just trying to figure out how. Like, how are they going to bring them back is exactly what Andrew Wilson said on the call. And, of course, how are they going to get gamers to not be mad when they come back? That's going to be tough. Now, they did essentially blame the whole loot box scandal as to why they didn't hit their expectations, and yeah, that's why, right? Everyone got really mad about the loot boxes, and they didn't want to buy it, although people still bought it, but you can't get everyone not to buy a game with the Star Wars logo on it. So there we go. We have numbers for Battlefront 2. We find out a bit about Anthem actually being pushed. We find out about a new Battlefield that's coming out, which is interesting that they wanted to push Anthem away from Battlefield, but they wouldn't do the same courtesy for Titanfall 2 that just got swallowed up by all of those other shooters, despite probably being the best game released that year when it came to shooters. So I don't really know why that is. Maybe they learned their lesson from that and they're pushing Anthem, or maybe they had that Respawn acquisition kind of mapped out a while before then and thought, hey, let's throw Titanfall 2 to the wolves and we'll just pick up Respawn later. In our last bit of news today, I want to talk a bit about Bayonetta 1 and 2, the collection coming to the Switch. Haven't really heard as much about it as I thought. Listen, I mean, they're the same games we've played to an extent. They're going to be on a system that's kind of interesting to see them on because it will be portable. That's one of the reasons a lot of people likes to see these different games, especially when it comes to visuals. How does it look on the Switch? Well, we did get a full trailer that shows gameplay, and this was posted by Nintendo Japan on YouTube, and you could see this entire trailer for yourself. I'll leave a link down in the description, but it looks good. It looks how I'd expected, right? It looks similar to the 360 version, much smoother than the PS3 version, which was pretty much a train wreck, to be honest. I don't know which version they ported over. More than likely, for the first one, for example, they pulled from the PC version, and then, obviously, Bayonetta 2, they pulled from the Wii U version. There was nowhere else to pull from. However, everything looks pretty good, I think, in motion. We're going to want to see how it looks when Digital Foundry gets their hands on it and really looks over this stuff, because the resolution could be changing, frame rates could be dipping, we don't know. If I had to at least put something out there, I would say keep the frame rate at 60 and play around with the resolution as needed, because when this game is flying all over the place, it's going to be hard to count pixels anyway. So, you know, if it needs to drop resolution-wise, that's fine. Just keep the frame rate at 60. That's the most important thing when it comes to Bayonetta 1 and 2. But that is out now in 2 weeks, February 16th. So at least we have some info, we have some gameplay for it. And overall, it looks like it's going to be a fun game. Of course, it's Bayonetta. If you missed out on it, it's completely worth the money. Maybe if you've already played it, you'll have to kind of figure out if you want to buy it again. I personally will be getting it again because I do like Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2. And that's going to do it for Newswave today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave a bunch of comments down below, guys, about everything we talked about today. Whether it is this interesting GameCube emulator that seems to have surfaced on an Nvidia Shield in China. Somebody built it. Either it was Nvidia or it was Nintendo, but it seems to be running astoundingly well on a Tegra chipset, and this could be something that finds its way to the Switch. Maybe they developed it and put it out there to test it and see how everything worked, and they had at least a place for it at this time. But I think the GameCube games being on the Virtual Console are just becoming more and more of a reality as we go forward here. I do think it will happen at some point. When, I have no idea. We still don't know much about the online service, so the Virtual Console will come probably after the online service. But I think it's pretty cool to see an emulator surface that runs great, and it's on a Tegra, the same architecture, the same chipset that's in the Switch, just different frequencies. We'll have to see how things run when they move it over. However, having Android completely missing from the Switch and having a much more efficient OS that is built for the Switch in particular, I think that could help them get around really the difference in frequencies. Also, let me know what you think about the entire EA conference. There was a lot of stuff to take from there. Are you surprised that really they had to confirm the Anthem was being delayed without saying the word delayed? Are you surprised at how many copies Battlefront 2 seemed to at least move, shipped, or sold? 9 million is still a lot for a game, but still, with the Star Wars logo, it should have sold more than that. What do you think about the Battlefield game? It's going to be kind of interesting, so let me know down below, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.